Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101, another test of this paper, but this time I want to go with some brighter tones. We want to see what this paper can do in terms of the aesthetic, the look of it. I'm going to be stamping this out, my imagery out, in water-based dye inks, okay? Because I want to try out some alcohol inks for my coloring, in addition to my acrylic paint pens. And I was just taking a look at this, getting my bearings as far as where, what configuration I want this paper to be in, because this paper does have kind of a vignette around it when it's in its full 8.5 by 11 size. So when you quarter it, you're kind of stuck with some imbalanced, I don't know, whatever, tonal variation and texturing. All right, so we have a very light impression, just as I expected, because the dye-based inks are a lighter, more absorbent ink. They're thinner, okay, than your pigment ink. All right, so let's see here. I want to do this one in the spirit of this one right here, so let's go for the same composition. Now, I might do some impressions a little bit lighter, though. Or, I should say, a little bit thicker and darker, not lighter. All right, so I would say that my black here, which is normally I'd say it's an upper 90%, 95 to, I don't know, 98% black, maybe 95% black in terms of value, or 90% gray, I should say. It looks more like, I don't know, it looks like a 50% black. Okay, now this paper is maybe a little bit, it's absorbent, so it's absorbing a lot of the ink and it's going back into the pulp of the paper. But it also might be a little bit resistant to some ink as well, because it is printed with printer's inks on there, you know, when they're doing this type of aged look. You know, it's like they're, you know, printing over the top of it with an ink that's the same density as if it were black, okay? If it were black, we'd say, oh my God, it's really coated, but, you know, colors are the same thickness of printer's inks, so and those inks, you know, they I don't know how porous they are. It just depends on probably what type of ink we're talking about, where it's printed, etc., and how many coats are over the top of this. I would imagine this is probably let's see, black, yellow. I don't know if there's any cyan in there. I'm not sure what colors would make up this brown ink. Okay, so on this word stamp, let's go for something fairly dark. Okay, because I'm not going to be coloring over it. So let's make this darker right now. All right, so I stamped that over there to the I didn't leave myself a ton of room for this image here with word stamps, so I'm stamping it a little bit to the right, okay? Let's see what that looks like. I usually do center impressions. All right, so I'm stamping out. I'm doing my coloring on this overhanging branch. It's called leaves. And it has also stamped out much lighter than the colors that are utilized in their, whatever, strongest impression, strongest value. All right, I don't have too much space for them up there, but let's have them kind of hanging down, like about so. I want it to be, yeah, a little reasonably dense, but not too dense, because I'm going to come over the top of those with some black impressions as well. So let's see, let's use a little bit red here. I'm using red, green, and kind of a brownish olive brown. A little bit of an earthy look, but again, I want to go for some colors, so let's go for some, deeper red. I really like the look of those impressions up there. I don't know, I'll have to test that out. A lot of testing to do on new types of surfaces and papers and background colors, because you never really know what they're going to look like or how they're going to take ink. I can make my assumptions based on some of the things that I've done on other surfaces before, but you never really know how things are going to accept media until you try it out. All right. Go for that. You can see how much darker my Brilliance ink pad works on here. You can use like a VersaFine Clair too for your impressions. Not with the use of alcohol inks though. Okay, I'm just talking about if you're doing something like this, really minimal. All right, so let's try some different things here. I've tried colored pencils on this surface, so I don't need to test that out. But let's go with some alcohol inks here. Let's start off with some lighter tones, and it'll work incrementally a little bit darker. Now, I could really go to town with some different types of media, but for me, with, I don't know, these experiments, especially on this type of paper, I'm not really going for something that's super layered and in-depth that's going to take up, a decent amount of time. Okay, this is a really light tone, so it's not really doing too much to that, but it's giving me a little bit of a saturation and layering on this paper, okay? Let's try some green on here. Yeah, I'm a little bit chicken, so I'm going to go with a little bit of a lighter value green first. Okay, now this one's going on there, but it barely shows. All right, so for me that's good, okay, because I'm really in control of how much is being applied, or I should say how much is visible, because it is incredibly light in value. So it really takes a while for it to kind of absorb in and to be visible. All right, let's go for a little bit of a warmer, probably more intense green here. This one's almost too green for me. It's I'm not going to use it as much as that previous one. I'm trying to be careful not to use too much of this, because that looks pretty dark to me. I mean, it's darker than the other one. It's still a very light value, but pretty dark. It just in contrast to the other, the previous one. All right, let's try this color. It's a little bit of an olive. I'll use it in my shadow areas. Shadow areas are just kind of at the base of those kind of tufts of grass in there. I've mentioned in previous videos, I won't go into it too much here, but the difference between kind of coloring and lighting a scene. Lighting is coloring too, but you're just being a little bit more selective. You're leaving kind of open areas within objects or spaces. And that, by contrast, creates lighting, because you're depicting lighting through the use of shade. Anything that's lighter than what you've added in there appears as some kind of illuminated area. All right, let's get into the trees here. Let's use some yellow, because yellow is a pretty good base. Or maybe some of these trees are just yellow. I'll use it on some of the evergreen trees as well. You're kind of doing this thing that they call scumbling. Like sometimes I'm just kind of going around like this a little bit within those spaces. I'm not coloring completely. I mean, I guess you could, but again, if you color in like 100%, you might be missing kind of opportunities for lighting in the scene if everything's just uniformly toned. I always give just kind of our surrounding as a good example of this, like this. My hand is different tones in here, although it's, you know, pretty uniform in color. This barrel, this pencil, you can see, you know, the shadows on the sides here. It's being top lit. So if you treat things kind of equally, again, what you can do, but things tend to look flatter, like this piece of paper. There's no variation from side to side, but if you go like this, then it looks like different volumes. So if you're coloring in here and not up here, this looks like a different plane. Anyway, this orange right here is really a little bit too light, or dark, I should say, too bright, not light, but bright. So I won't go over that too much more. Okay, let's go in here with some of these evergreen. Let's go back to some of these other trees in here. And I'll color in my trees, my evergreen trees, that I should say. Some green. Okay, I almost forgot about this. This is what happens to me a lot of times. I'll forget to kind of do the reflections. Ooh, that one's pretty bright there. Can't remember what yellow I used here. Oh. Yeah, this one looks pretty. Why does it look so bright? Maybe when this color gets first applied, it looks much brighter. So I'm just reiterating what's going on in the trees down here in the reflections. Okay. Sometimes I go a little bit lighter values in the reflected areas just to create a little bit of differentiation. We want the kind of that mirroring, but not like too extreme. Although it could be pretty cool to have things rather extreme. Let your eye be the judge of it and just apply accordingly. Some of you might say, hey, you know, that's the thing, I don't know where to apply it. What I do is I just kind of apply things fairly, you know, kind of methodically. You can see I'm not really developing anything too distinctly. I keep going back and forth. I'm jumping around a little bit. And that's what I do just to kind of get my bearings until I get a little bit of a better feel of things. Here's a little bit of a yellow-green here. This is doing a lot of, quite a bit of coloring here. I mean, it does, add to the whole, process and timing of a card, but I still feel that it's a pretty quick style to work in. And if you like coloring, I mean, there's whole, kind of, genres of there's a whole genre of crafting hobby. Well, I don't know if it's crafting. Is it crafting? Coloring book? Yeah, coloring, I guess. Adding a little bit of blue to this water down here. It's a very pale blue, for sure. But we'll add some of this down here. And I'll also bring some of this into, I was kind of deciding what color I wanted to do this rock here. Maybe it'll be a little bit of a tan or brown. This right here, I'm going to come into the shadow areas right in here. And here's that thing. I'll leave some of the top surfaces of this rock lighter, just so that it reads as three-dimensional. A little more shading in the darker areas here. And I'm getting a little bit clumsy with this one right here. That one kind of was a little bit blotchy, maybe. So let's see. So let's go back in and just... Ooh, that's a little bit too orange. See, I just used a tiny bit of it to see if I like it. And that was a little bit too bright right there. Let's see, I'm trying to look for the right value here. I don't want it too dark. Let's just switch up. Let's go to some gray tones right here. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good there. I like this color right here. I'm going to add in a little bit of shadow work underneath my trees here. At this point in time, I'm not really kind of... I'm going along like the bank here at the far end, right there, just to give it a little bit more kind of an anchor, visual anchor, a little bit maybe. All right, so that is that. Let's try out some additional paint pen work. Okay, so I have yellow, orange, and red, kind of in the spirit of, you know, fall tones, fall colors, and ooh, this yellow here is pretty light. It's lighter than what I thought it would be. Usually start off with darker colors, and I work, you know, lighter over the top of it. I'm being a little bit conservative here. Just starting light, but okay, let's go in here and use some of these brighter tints. Okay, this is the red. It's a really bright red. You got to get these ones flowing. The ink in this I don't know how you pronounce that company. They're a lot denser, so if you don't use them, you know, for a little bit, they tend to get a little bit dry on the surface. They're not clogged. It's just the paint dries around the surface, so you scribble it off and kind of crack through that. All right, so that's a pretty bright red in there. Okay, but I figured, you know, we're experimenting here. Let's get a little bit extreme with it. So there's some deciduous trees amongst the evergreens in there. It's a little bit too much right now, but you know, we're just starting on this the layering process here. I'll try not to make it, you know, too extended though. Like I said, you know, the whole idea of this paper, for me at least, is to go, you know, for some kind of new and interesting looks. A lot of people have, you know, just different types of pre-printed papers, and I don't know, a lot of people, you know, we have a lot of papers, especially if you've been scrapbooking or stamping for a while, and a lot of it, you know, people just don't use or don't, you know, think to use a lot of it. That's like myself. I had a lot of paper that I had for years, and a lot of types of papers that I had for years that I just never used at all, or just really minimally. And I decided that, yeah, when you have like so many packs of kind of unopened or unused papers, and you were attracted to them, for one reason or another. Maybe they just look cool. It's kind of, it's good to use them and then, just kind of realize why you liked them so much. Sometimes you have to kind of define their possibilities or general usage, especially if you haven't seen it used too much before. So go back to kind of your fundamentals in terms of what types of media will adhere and dry on certain types of surfaces. Know kind of the general characteristics of them. This paper, for example, is really absorbent. Because it's a non-coated paper, and it might be just something that you kind of haven't been using much, if at all, in my case. But I'm just going, I go back to what I know about, a lot of different types of papers. So I'm able to use it a little bit, in the beginning, and then, it's just a matter of kind of getting in, kind of better tune with it and figuring out a really good application for your purposes. All right, so we're getting a little bit of a kind of a shimmer added to this. These paint pens, just kind of building it up. It's kind of like a pointillism type of, exercise on here, which I'm not, really kind of experienced with. But if you kind of use it and layer enough on there of most types of, whatever media, I generally think it comes out pretty good looking. It looks weird though. You have to go through kind of a weird looking, kind of surface, for a while with some of this. There's these little plants down here in the corner. All right, now I've been using this kind of beige Artistro extra fine pen instead of like a white. Almost looks like white right now. Maybe that's because of all the colors that are on there. But this is going to be kind of my real light illumination color or pen marker. That, see how it just kind of brings out that shoreline a little bit more. All right. On the autumn imagery, getting this flowing a little bit more. Sometimes if you want things to look a little bit more, transparent, you don't want a color to be too strong, then what you do is you don't shake this up as much, so it's a little bit more watery. But I want a little bit more opacity, so I, shook it up fully. Adding little highlights on my rocks in here. So I look a little bit more three-dimensional like that. Okay, there's my shoreline. Now, one of the things I've noticed, not just this time, but when I've been doing this before, is the ink or this paint goes on much lighter looking, and then as it dries, it absorbs into the paper, and it looks a little darker. If you're doing light on dark. And again, it's because this paint just kind of absorbs into the paper a little bit more as it dries. A little bit of highlighting on my trees. I think this is looking pretty decent. I haven't used too many uncoated types of papers in the past. You know, cardstocks and you know, foils, that type of thing. So working with something that's a little bit more, or a lot more absorbent is pretty interesting for me. Okay, so here comes the tree trunks in here. And for me, this really starts to define things really nicely like that. Look at those tree trunks, how amazing they look in there. You can do the kind of some branches kind of extending out from the trunks. That. And then what you do is you come in here into the water and you add those reflections down there as well. I might be adding in, you know, some trunks where they just don't really exist in here, but I'm just kind of adding it anyway. All right, so I'm inventing some, but look at that. All right, so a little bit more highlighting right in here. Okay, so this one didn't come together for me. My coloring in my trees, I should say, often look like little blobs, okay? By the time I add in so much media and things, it looks real blotchy in here, okay? It's when you do this pen in here, it's like, that solved it all, okay? So don't be kind of like freaked out if you start coloring it in. You know, wait till you kind of move through your full kind of process before you know, a lot of people give up. It's like, oh my God, that, you know, I totally blew it with the coloring or something like that. And it's not so. You just have to kind of finish it. Okay, so here comes some reeds here. All right. I'm going with some pretty dark ones here with the, you know, the pigmenting. This is where you can use your, you know, your VersaFine clear if you want to, or something like that. You just don't want to color VersaFine clear with like an alcohol pen. But you can certainly use it as your, you know, finishing layering, okay? Now here, I'm going to go for multiple impressions, or multiple layers, I should say, of these leaves in the foreground. I'll just use a little bit because I don't have too much room up here. So we'll have some black impressions to go with those darker colored ones, okay? To create some layering. I was going to add a little bit more, but I think that's it right there. I don't want to cover up everything that I've done before. All right, so I think that is a pretty charming little piece like that. Yeah, I don't know, that color looks pretty good. So, antiqued, and I don't know, a little bit more modern looking. Let's see what this one looks like. Let's see what they look like head to head here. So I would do my gold, I think, still on the perimeter like that. A little bit of white border. Actually, it's not white, it's more like cream. It's the same color as this pen here. But, I don't know, two different looks here. Hey, you decide which one you like. I tend to like whatever one I've done, like the recently more. The thing about this one is it just kind of reveal when I put those tree trunks in there and that real beige-ish, tone in there, it like defined it all. It was looking like a big mushy, kind of blurry mess in the background, especially with that dark, kind of bright red foliage in the background. But like I said, when I was adding it, I wasn't panicking or anything like that because I know how these things tend to look or develop when you add in those lighter elements, so you get things kind of a little bit out of focus and a little bit blurry looking, and then you add the crisp element back into it. So it's kind of a textural and a value thing that's really standing out, but then you bring it all together in the end, with some different types of touches in there. So I don't know, you just have to see what that kind of looks like when you get to that point. And like I'm not gonna get to that point, like if I'm jumping ship. But hey, believe me, I totally get it though. When we're doing like coloring like this, and mine, this thing's like absorbing. It's like coloring on copy paper, in terms of all, that's what it feels like. It's not like nice coated cardstock. So when I'm coloring on this, it's like like I said, I'm coloring. It feels like I'm coloring on cheap copy paper to me. Okay, but this paper's not. It's not meant. It's not designed to be, for us crafters. It's designed to be, run through a printer or something like that. So you get this kind of antique-looking document or something like that. It'd be really cool. Or you're typing out a letter to someone, and you run it through the printer, something of that sort. So, but that being said, looking at this, I think that looks, pretty decent. As far as the colors and everything like that goes on there, I think this paper can, potentially take a decent amount of media on here. I'm going to add in a few little of these little orange little leaves floating in my water. I'll add some down here too. Adding those little types of touches in here. Let's get a little bit of this orange in here too. All right, so anyways, not too bad. It's like a half an hour piece right here. And that's, that's trying some new things, like for the first time ever, so I'm trying to figure it out. When I do, if I was to do this again, I would know what I'm doing with the color, not the colored pencils, but the alcohol markers, and how I would layer that on there. I would stick with a lot of the lighter tones first before jumping into, the brighter tones. So I have a good range of tones that you're working with, and really kind of lay down, some decent layering with those lighter ones first. Like I say, I jumped to like a red or something like that. I forget what color exactly, but kind of have those intermediate colors in there. So if you're going to something like that, don't jump from like red to, yellow to red or something like that. I think you moving through these intermediate types of tones. And then same thing with the greens up there. Don't think, okay, what's a pine green? Start off with your lighter tones and then just work kind of incrementally into your darker ones. And in this case, that impression was already dark to begin with, so it's not like, you're not going to have a darker value by using a lighter one over at the top of it, because alcohol inks are transparent. All right, so anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or do any of these things, I'd love to see what you're doing. If you like these videos, hope you hit the like and subscribe.